For decades, humans have dreamed of setting foot on Mars. It's the next big step for space exploration. But how do we actually make it happen? We're talking about a planet that's 140 million miles away. It has toxic air, and it's colder than Antarctica. This isn't a weekend getaway we're talking about. It's a whole new chapter for humanity. But from powerful rockets to 3D printed habitats, and even terraforming the planet itself, this is how we'll get to Mars, and how we'll survive once we're there. The first challenge, getting off Earth. We need a rocket that's big, powerful, and reusable. That's where SpaceX's Starship comes in. The fully reusable spacecraft is designed to carry over 100 people and cargo to Mars. Standing at 400 feet tall, it's the biggest and most powerful rocket ever built. And I'm sure you've seen those crazy videos. The Starship boosters being caught mid-air by giant robotic arms. Yeah, imagine catching a multi-story skyscraper as it falls from space. That's the level of engineering we're talking about here. But SpaceX isn't the only one working on Mars rockets. NASA is developing the SLS, the Space Launch System, which is designed for deep space missions. However, unlike Starship, it's not reusable, meaning each launch costs billions of dollars, and we both know the government will not like that. There's also some experimental designs, like fusion rockets, which could use nuclear energy to generate insane amounts of thrust. Imagine getting to Mars in just a few weeks instead of months. It is theoretical right now, but in the future, who knows? One thing about Mars that makes space travel even trickier is we can't just send people or supplies whenever we want. Mars and Earth orbit the Sun at different speeds, meaning the distance between them is constantly changing. The perfect launch window happens at about every 26 months, when Mars is closest to Earth. So if we miss our chance, we have to wait over 2 years for the next one. Imagine missing your flight, and the next available ticket is in 2027. Not ideal. And even when we do launch, like I said earlier, Mars isn't exactly next door. It's at 140 million miles away. Not even David Goggins could run that. A normal rocket takes about 7 months to get there. But what if we could go faster? Right now, astronauts on the International Space Station experience some health problems. After just 6 months in space, we're talking about muscle loss, bone weakening, and even some vision problems. A 7-month journey to Mars is dangerous. So, scientists are working on nuclear-powered rockets that could cut that trip in half, making it just 3 or 4 months. Nuclear thermal propulsion, short NTP, would use a nuclear reactor to heat liquid hydrogen, creating twice the speed of today's rockets. And if that's not sci-fi enough for you, scientists are also exploring antimatter propulsion, where a tiny amount of antimatter could get a spacecraft to go speeds never even seen before. But this is still far in the future. The goal? Get to Mars as quickly as possible to limit radiation exposure and the effects of zero gravity. Space is an extremely dangerous place. First, let's talk about gravity, or the lack thereof it. When astronauts spend months in microgravity, their bones and muscles start to weaken. Some astronauts who return from the ISS need months of physical therapy to walk properly again. That's why future Mars missions may use rotating sections for the spacecraft to simulate gravity. Think of it like a space station with a spinning ring, just like you see in sci-fi movies, like Interstellar, the best movie ever. Another big problem is radiation. On Earth, we have a magnetic field that protects us from solar radiation, but in space, we're completely exposed. Without protection, astronauts could face increased risk of cancer and even radiation sickness. That's why Mars-bound ships will need to thicken their radiation shields, and possibly even use water walls to absorb the radiation. And let's not forget the mental challenge. Imagine spending months in a small spaceship with the same people, and of course, there is no escape. That's why NASA is studying how isolation affects the human brain. Astronauts may even use VR simulations to help cope with stress. Basically, think of it like playing a video game, but in space. Alright, so let's say we make it to Mars. Now what? Mars is not a welcoming place. The air is toxic, temperatures drop to below -80 degrees Fahrenheit, and there is no running water. Not to mention, if the Mars colonists need anything, it's not like they can just order it on Amazon. It would take months or even years for supplies to arrive. That means that the first Martian settlers will need to be completely self-sufficient. One solution? 3D printed habitats, made from Martian soil. Not only does this save weight on the trip, so we don't have to carry it, but it also protects the astronauts from radiation and dust storms. And let's talk about food. We can't just bring a year's worth of MREs, not that you'd want to. Scientists are working on hydroponic farming. Hydroponic farming is a method of growing plants without normal soil, using a water-based nutrient solution instead, to grow food using artificial light with the Martian soil. And water? Well, Mars actually has frozen water beneath its surface, and currently NASA is working on a way to extract it and purify it so that they can use it there. The goal? A fully self-sustaining Mars colony that does not rely on Earth. So, if we succeed, Mars could become humanity's second home. Imagine a permanent Mars colony with its own research labs, greenhouses, and eventually even cities. But here's the wildest idea. What if we could terraform Mars? Some scientists believe that billions of years ago, Mars actually looked like Earth, with its own oceans, rivers, and even a thick atmosphere. If we could somehow heat the planet up, we might be able to bring it back to its former glory and make it habitable again. Hashtag make Mars habitable again. Some of the ideas for terraforming Mars include releasing greenhouse gases to warm the planet, or building giant mirrors in space to reflect the sunlight, and even using nuclear explosions to create heat. Yes, this was really proposed. It may sound like science fiction, but so did landing on the moon, and we made that happen. Mars is no longer just a dream. It's becoming a real possibility. But will we see humans go to Mars in our lifetime? Let me ask you this. If the opportunity arose for you, would you go? Let me know in the comments below. And if you love space exploration, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more deep space discussions. Thank you for watching.